Here we are, people. This is Dr. Zoo on a Thursday afternoon, 21st of May, 2026. Great to be with you this afternoon. A lot of buzzing going around the place. It is fantastic in Albury, Wodonga. Very pleased to be here. Now, we're about a minute early, which is unbelievable. So, setting a new record for Dr. Zoo with the shows. Little thumbs up there if we can, people. It's always important that Dr. Zoo's not talking to himself. Does that quite often, actually. Even talks to himself and doesn't even know he's talking to himself. But here we are. Dr. Zoo wants to just get a little indicator that fantastic, great work. I'm hoping that means there's great work we're talking or great work that we're great working. But either way, we are here to discuss. Now, we sent out recently, thumbs up, beautiful, fantastic, Rocket Man. Love you. Love your work. Yes, here we are. We are now just going to give an update of the email. We sent out another burst, which is on the website, another update, which is just to make sure everybody's got their heads on this AUSTRAC thing. We had a few queries coming through and we wanted to make it clear that from our legal advice and perspective, it's a very, very positive thing that we have done on or about the 12th of May, as I recall. And we haven't had any bad feedback at all. So that's a very good, cross your fingers, cross your toes. That's a great sign, everybody on the AUSTRAC side of things. Amazing bunch of people to be dealing with. And we are certainly in the list, and they have got the job ahead of them to go through what we've done. We've since been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, everybody, on prepping ourselves for getting really pumped, obviously, to get the Zootopia switched straight on then. We've still got some little bits and pieces that the boys are doing down there with Flux on this iOS Apple little trinket thing we're playing with. We've had some success and some failures, but I think that'll be okay in the end, which will unleash the way in which we can go about our business without people worrying about how to hook it up. Android, not a problem. Good on you, Android. Good on you, Google. Hey, how good's that, Google? Been out and about. So that update was probably the most thorough one we've done in terms of the law and how it applies and the reasoning and what's happened for Zootopia. It's on the website. So have a squiz at that. It's been in email. We cannot do more than what we've done in terms of giving you a transparent, very, very solid position as to how good that's going to be. And remember, it can go either way. I mean, if AUSTRAC comes back and says, look, the system looks so good, which we say it is, and we've canvassed this across just to make sure our legal team has been busy, because we've also been making sure that we've got all these little boxes ticked with ASIC because of the we don't need to go anywhere near the AFSL licensing. As you know, one of the rare coins in Australia, like Bitcoin, possibly Ethereum, as to not being a financial product, because of all the good things you people do, is you can move your coins around and you have the sovereign control. You run the show. Split Chain just sits there and idly bubbles behind the scene with the last bit of cached information. In fact, I had one of our Zucoin holders, one of the greats from up north, Queensland. We've got a lot of great support up there. Welcome, Queensland. Welcome, the Mekong River. Cheerio to all you people up there, doing a great job. So we like that. And a big cheerio to our great friends out in the Bahamas and Europe. Getting a lot of feedback from our people in America of all the action that's happening there. There's been a lot of developments there with the SEC and bits and pieces that support our case for what we're doing and how we want to pump ahead with what the success of Split Chain and the scalability stuff that we're doing. So that's a big thing. So welcome aboard there. And the position was a video, basically went fairly lengthy, but the person who sent it to me knows who he is. And that last 10 odd minutes of that video was very interesting because there's a bit of a squeeze coming, people, in terms of how the big shots are getting more and more control over these systems like Ethereum's blockchain and also certainly Bitcoin and its blockchain, because, as what we said, Dr. Zu said some time ago, and there's an analysis on the website, you will clearly see the comparisons between how we've built the system. And as a result of that, those processes are tightening the noose as to the miners on the one hand, proof of work, and certainly the stakeholders in Ethereum's case, proof of stake. If they get more and more costly, that means there's less and less participants. That means there's more centralization, which could slow down things long term when you talk about the Bitcoin and Ethereum processes. And we've warned people about that. It's getting tougher and tougher. So this video alluded to that and how you've got the big guns coming in. In the Zucoin world, you are the big guns. You, as in the Zucoin masses, the Zucoin community, the early adopters, etc. When you transact, you are in full power and control of the transaction, the way in which it validates and moves between buyer and sender. Won't go over how that all works again, but for the new ones, welcome aboard. Go to the website. Everything is there for you to search and play around and research and check it all out. So just make sure you do that, because the humble little split chain only caches information and doesn't participate in any great sense of the validation or the processes of how the transactions move between two parties. That's a big critical difference. And one day out there in Zucoin world, there'll be some little wealthy, super wealthy Zucoin holder that says, I'm going to take on the world and protect the network, and you will run your little node or your little computer plug-in, and you'll be hiding out there in the backlocks of Queensland with a satellite dish, and that could be the one that keeps the entire network going for many, many years to come, because it only needs one truth, one node. And at $105 a month, that's a big difference to where we see these big players spending millions and millions, $1 billion or more on trying to keep a computer going with more data being accumulated in the case of blockchain with Bitcoin. It is one of the great, it's a bit of a sad thing really, but it's good for us. Great for us solving the problems, and great to see the things that are happening behind the scenes. Particularly with the bubbling along with our CTO, Robert Novak. His headspace is driven by, you'll see some big changes coming soon again, which just tightens up the speed and efficiencies. And, I get confused sometimes with when he looks at me straight in the eye, and I've got to go back to try and recall some of my physics days and bits and pieces. He starts to spin off into the world of quantum computing and what the hell's happening over the next quarter for that, which will be streetlights in front. And that's been fantastic from Rob's point of view. And then, of course, had a little chat again today with the other great man, not as great as Rob, but he's still great, Riley and the team, and they've got all sorts of exciting things in preparation coming. They're mainly one sector of the dev team is fiddling around at the fringes with this iOS stuff on making sure that we can pull it back with some trickery on deep lead links and get that one install button going. I'd be absolutely thrilled that, if AUSTRAC come out of the woodwork and said, boom, here we are, we're ready to rock and roll, there's the approval, away you go. And that triggers it at the same time that people can just press one button for my older generation. Sadly, some of the younger generation don't care about the older ones until they get their inheritance. But even now, inheritance, there's a tough gig. We got. I don't want to talk too much about politics today, in the sense of Australian politics, people. Magnificent person. I see you on the screen there. Looking forward to hosting a node. You will look forward to it, I can assure you. There is also coming out of the woodwork a concept that can make money for the nodes. We haven't disclosed any of that yet, but we have an extraordinarily brilliant concept for that, which has nothing to do with mining and nothing to do with stakeholding, but gives every individual person with a few bob in their pocket and $105 a month, give up a few beers and you will run a node. Node. It's a funny word, isn't it? You think about a node. I mean, what genius come up with that? Node. You know, you go back through history and you look at how did these blokes create new terms? Anyway, some might have called it a terminal or computer or pod or banana. Either way, we've got nodes. So getting a node will be a huge opportunity because it'll be so simple for people to plug in and operate. It's a bit like, you know, putting a plug into a PowerPoint. We don't even think about how the electricity moves. Nobody cares. Nobody cares of what the great men in the early part of the century did. We just know that somehow the vacuum cleaner gets turned on or the juicer gets turned on because this stuff moves, and away we go. And others like to think about the physics behind it. In fact, I just read the article the other day, interestingly, as an aside, that they're reinventing and pulling back into play what Tesla was doing, which they've sort of doubted, of moving electricity through the airways and space over long distances without power lines. Now, wouldn't that be good for Chris Bowen? Hey, a little fella? He's putting up all these power lines, and New Zealand's got this thing running. You know, it's not on a big scale, but certainly they've replicated it, and they've got electricity running through the atmosphere, and there you go. Power through the ether, through the space. How good's that? And Chris Bowen, he's putting up all these power lines. Anyway, I suppose we get to reuse the wires and things, and he might have some ideas on how that's going to work, but there you go. Very impressed with the latest too on speaking electricity, people. One of our great supporters picked up one of those Chinese vehicles, and he's been reporting into Jiaxing every day. The data has been communicated back to China, so his movements have been tracked, and he's enjoying every minute of it, of his new electric vehicle. So congratulations. You know who you are. You know exactly who you are out there with that vehicle. Looks impressive. Had a look at it the other day. Brilliant. Must say, what I was super impressed with is it comes with, at no extra cost, it comes with a trailer. And when he's used the vehicle, which is extraordinary, it actually gets far more mileage than just trying to work out where to plug it in as he travels up north, because there's not as many power stations on the way through to the trip. But this new Chinese invention is fantastic. You get a trailer and there's a little diesel generator on the back, and you just plug it in and it keeps the car going. So it's a magnificent concept. And not only that, you get to use the trailer for other things can be put in there. So he's got a tent in there, and he's got all these bits and pieces, a bit of water bottles and stuff. And the car, it just seems to go forever. He just fills up the generator, and it powers the electricity in the vehicle. An extraordinary concept, a huge breakthrough. So let's have a look. We've got a couple of bits here. Radiant one. Yeah, 21 plus days since your team has been working on the iOS problems. How confident are you will be solved soon? And what is your backup plan? Well, let me tell you this. You've got to cut through it and say to yourself, when do you draw the line? Well, we're still going to keep beavering it. Never confident with Apple, unless it's Rob that's pulling it all together. And we can't afford to bring the big fella into the program. We've got the other team in Melbourne doing that, but because he's too busy with quantum, because that's the next big thing in the next many months ahead, because that's where we want to make sure that when we do flick at the switcher for Zootopia, you guys can trade and knock yourselves out. But more importantly, we have the teams focused on Zoo tokens and certainly other concepts that we want to build out for expanding, particularly we call them two types of tokens. Really, one is we are focused on my business model, as you could see by the Zoo Vision. I think it was Article 31 on the website. Is very, very important that as soon as we get Zootopia switched on and you're trading and your coins are going brilliantly, it's important that we accelerate not just the increasing the numbers on the consumer side, but I really do want to pump prime the merchants. And that is where Zukaz, so the boys are busy testing MVP versions of Zukaz, the new app, I think you guys will enjoy when you see that one. And that's all about the green light of merchants creating AR tokens or AR Zoo tokens. And I've gone over this before, but basically it creates a whole new wealth strategy of business opportunities and people and merchants avoiding any advertising in future, taking on the big guns, given a run for money with Google and Meta and all those companies, and allowing the simplicity of a direct communication, which we can now deliver because of the notifications, which you guys are used to. That's the instant, the only crypto in the world with that, people. Think about that, that you can send instantly two-factor authentication between two parties, which means that a token, a AR token of, say, $20 that might come in from Harry and Guru next door for their restaurant meal or coffee, and they can either place that out through a hunt and collect, as you know, with the Zukaz. Have a look at Zukaz.com. Nothing's changed other than we've accelerated the efficiencies of how that works with a better app, and we'll release that not too far away. Or they can go direct to your phone. You could have them as a favorite, and you'll swipe left or right, and you'll say, "Oh, I love Gurus. I love Meraki, and I'm going to put them on my little list for receiving all of their updates, which will include these tokens." Now, you might receive that directly to your phone. Now, the beautiful thing is that even with the registration through AUSTRAC of the platform, that's for KYC purposes, you then have the capacity of listing these tokens. You could press a button and list it on Zootopia to trade, so others can come in and buy. Now, it's the basis of a token from a merchant is that it can only be redeemed back to the merchant. So if Harry and Guru have their $20, that $20 can only go back to them. So that is completely outside of the purvey of ASIC and the AFSL licensing. So we don't have to worry ourselves sick about that. That becomes an independent token, similar to the Zucoin itself, which we have one of those rare few notifications as to it not being a financial product. And the same will apply with the AR Zoo token. So that means that you can then have secondary trading. So either if you receive that $20 of AR token, you can go and redeem it with the QR codes and things in your app or the Zucoin wallet and get your $20 worth of goods, all the goodies from Harry and Guru. Or alternatively, you can put up for sale, or you can transfer it to someone else through your wallet and do an independent trade. Now, that also, by the way, if that was a $20 value, the merchant might directly put those onto Zootopia, and he might either give them away for free, or alternatively, there might be a small fee that the merchant can charge and make money as a result of his own redemption. It's an amazingly incredible concept for global growth, both from merchants onboarding, more merchants, more customers, more products, and more geo mapping, which leads to more money made on the data, and that data in itself becomes a massive piece of excitement for making truckloads of money through Zootopia, which then can create all sorts of concepts on liquidity pools and the way in which we can really assist without the need of market manipulation and everything else that goes on. So that's a big priority, is the merchant interaction with you guys, consumers around the world. That's huge. And then, and by the way, the very nature of what we've been through with the rollout with AUSTRAC's requirements really has reinforced and hit home how powerful Zootopia is from a corporations law perspective, and not needing the necessary issues that come with that under the new definitions, particularly for these crypto exchanges from an ASIC perspective, because Zootopia itself doesn't play games with anybody's money or coins or crypto. In this case, it could be the tokens or Zucoins. So, it's a case of all of those boxes have taken a long time, millions of dollars on legals, all the rest of it. It's worth it at the end, doing it the hard way. And things like, the way the team makes sure that the account structures of even the Stripe payments you are calling the shots both as a buyer and seller. You dictate the terms of whether you want to engage in that transaction, and you create the electronic instructions that Zootopia automates and sends to Stripe. And because of that, it's not facilitating the payment. It's not doing anything that gets caught by these, new rules that have come into play. And at least we have an isolation of the structures that isolated to AUSTRAC, and you don't need to get caught up in all the other stuff, particularly around the world, because you tick the box with ASIC, you tick the box with the SEC, you tick the box in Europe, and it's all right to say, oh yeah, look, we're going to go live in this place over here, but you've got to make sure the whole process is still slotting in behind with the legal requirements to really make it truly a decentralized system of sovereign control. Because unfortunately, people, we do have a few wombats running the joint. It just gets me worked up. I mean, the more and more I look at this stuff that we see from government is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. It just gets worse every day. And I don't know. I think Dr. Zoo really can sit back and say, the 80s and 90s was an extraordinarily wonderful time, and we've got to put up with these peanuts. But there are ways and there is opportunity of which we can help the younger generation. Now, I had a choice here. I got two bits of paper that I was going to slot in and talk about. Wait a minute, we've got a question. Radiant One. Let's have a look what you've got to say. You have stated that you are not expecting much demand at the start, which means the cap could only be 100 million. What gives you confidence merchants will join a new crypto with a tiny market cap? We have super confidence because merchants are suffering right now. If anybody's been taking notice of, and let's just refer back to Australia and the same problems around the world, actually. There's dimwits in every country. I mean, look at England. Good God. England, one of the all-time great. Well, I've visited England quite a few times over the years, and it's just a basket case. But let's just talk about merchants and gives us the confidence. The confidence is merchants are bleeding to death. Now, you've only got to look at this latest meme show that's going on with Albo, and that shows you the problems that small businesses are suffering. A merchant can be coffee shops and hairdressers and all these small businesses and garages and mechanics, you name it. And if you're an accountant, you can see that spread of small business have a direct contribution to employment, and that employment relates to wages and staff and super and all the rest of it. And these people who are motivated to create these small businesses are looking to minimize and reduce costs. And one of the costs is, how do you talk to a market? How do you talk to consumers in a way that you don't need to worry about the costs that come with the way they've been conditioned for Facebooks and Instagrams and Snapchats and all that stuff, where bots are running the show, and you've got a 0.08% success rate of conversion. 0.08%. It's pathetic. But they're still banking billions and billions of dollars. I saw a little thing there, did a test case on, it's one of the strategies we've got. And last year, Meta transferred overseas $17.4 billion in revenues. 17.4 billion. Now, if things were going so well, there wouldn't be this pushback against Albo and Jimbo for them being new co-founders and participants with these memes of all these small businesses, and there's thousands of them. You've only got to look at the sites and you can see Albo's everywhere as a new partner, 47% partner, because and that's not even the top end of the market. By the time you add up all the other taxes that small businesses are paying, payroll tax from the states, you've got rents, you've got all the electricity bills that Chris Bowen keeps putting up. All these things are happening, and they're all bleeding these people to death. Now they're looking for an edge, and one of the edges will be, people, it's our job to get consumers, that's you guys and others, on board, which we know we can do that successfully, and we will accelerate that with the vision of millions, if not tens of millions of people that no other crypto is going to be able to do. That's the first thing. You've got the capacity to do it with scalability. We've got the firepower to do it with, putting aside this one little thing with the iOS. We've solved all the other problems as we've gone along the journey and made it easier for people, and getting a lot more easier as time goes on, and protecting what you're doing and trying to minimize the risks of all the other idiots running around. You pull that together and merchants will have a place to go to. They will be able to see the firepower of people accepting them as favourites in whether it's local, your hometowns, or whether it's for online businesses, but they can communicate directly for the first time. That was how the original internet was designed, people. It was designed as a mechanism for merchants to rock up, set up their website, and communicate to the world the message of what they're selling. And guess what happened? Got hijacked. The big guns came in and aggregated data and said, oh, look at us. We'll help you. Sure you will. Google will take control of all your information, and they dictate the terms of where you so-called sit in the lists of search engines, and you might have a better business, but Wally is running his rock show and it ends up higher in the list, as an example. All right, so the internet really, a bit like Satoshi, the dream of peer-to-peer transfers and free transfers and the freedom to control your sovereign rights went out the window because the platforms weren't built correctly or designed properly in the first place. So we're very excited. We're excited that a humble structure like Zukaz, with the AR capabilities, with the firepower of what Pokemon has proven is successful globally, will be the encouragement for people to take up merchants' opportunities. And instead of giving that money of $17 billion to Meta, that $17 billion could be in product from Australian merchants directly to you, the consumer. Now, the wonderful thing about it, the most exciting thing is that if you got Guru's 20 bucks of token and you're not feeling like coffee today or banana bread, you don't have to use it. You can go online and create your own business and resell it. Because I know for a fact that there's some people in the other room right now, as we get to close to 4:30, that want some banana bread. I know that for a fact. Now, they will, in the knowledge that you've got the $20 voucher, the $20 token, they will pay you some money. They might pay you $2 or $3 or $5, but you now have the power of a business that you've created on the back of money coming from the merchant and not being sent through the ether, through this new technology of electricity, to head office of Mark Zuckerberg, who's extending the outside of his multi-billion-dollar house. All right? It's gone to you. And you now can generate that return by creating a business accordingly. So we know that works. The next thing is you want a gathering of the tribe. You want to revisit the beginnings of how capitalism started way back in the 15th century, way back with the Dutch, sitting on a bridge, talking to each other, having a chat, probably enjoying coffee, and deciding how to sell their shares for the next boat that's going to go into the land of Never Never, looking for spices. And people began trading, and that became the beginnings of capitalism, of the stock exchanges. And that is another revolution that's going to happen, because tokenization can be globalized with value attached underneath. They call that real world asset tokenization. But we are prime. We are in prime seat. We've got the best view in the country, in the world, to see how this unravels, because of split chain, because of scalability, because of the fractions, because of the incredible ability for 2.7 million PHP developers to come out of the blocks, who are now going to get the sack because of AI, can now re-engineer their energies towards building tokens quickly and efficiently, and either pushing them through Zukaz. They might even have their own apps. They don't need Zukaz. They can do their own thing. But they do have a market position where they can then trade that through Zootopia and ticking those boxes. So I'm a bit torn as to whether I lead into a structure for the young entrepreneurs I wanted to talk about today out there. And do not be disheartened by Albo and Jimbo. No doubt you probably voted for them. They've sucked you in. They sucked you in. I like to use the word lies, but this is how The politicians is one of the most extraordinary jobs in the world, actually. You can go in on the back of a weedy packet, you put up a shingle outside in your location, you tell everybody what a good person you are, they feel sorry for you and they vote you into Parliament, you get on this U-Butte pension gravy train, you get a beautiful salary, it's just magnificent for basically not doing a lot really. I mean, you've got other people to fall back on, you get your own staff, you get to run an office, and nobody checks the legislation. Some bureaucrat is saying that this is a good thing. There's a one-page explanatory memorandum, and they pass these laws, just like we talked about the AUSTRAC law. No one thought about the $13.4 billion loss over 10 years that's going to happen to small businesses, but that's okay. That sort of flows around the economy. We just borrow more as a government, and you get these jobs. And if you're a senator, I mean, who today in the world has a contract that lasts all those years as a fixed term? Staggering. People can't even get to the next week with most jobs. It's funny, really, isn't it? You go and get a loan, you borrow up your ass for $1.5 or $2 million as a young person. They're talking about getting, young people into houses, their first home, and the bank looks at it and says, "What are you earning this week?" But you've got no guarantee of certainty of employment next week. But somehow you get this loan, you're up your eyeballs in debt. Interest rates go up, and look what happens. There's a train wreck coming. And not only that, poor young people sit out there and they want to. The wealth creation of capitalism is about creating a business, getting out there, and all of a sudden you've got 3 coffee shops, 5 coffee shops. You want to set up a franchise. You want to float the thing. You want to get onto the share market. You go to the legal teams. Yeah, sure, we'll raise you $1 million or $2 million or $5 million, but we'll take half of that in legal fees from lawyers and accountants, and we'll put up a prospectus that this is high risk. And generally, the retail sector's told that you might blow the money up your ass, and you've got to have controls for people. Look, don't get me wrong. Dr. Zoo's seen the best of them in the 80s and 90s and all the rest of it. And the regulators have got a job to do. They're given, hundreds of millions of dollars to run the show. But when you think about it, you could actually have a 10-star rating system that actually checks all these investments. So 1-star means blood up your ass. 10-star means it's secure and it might be a government T-bill or something of that sort of line of thinking. And therefore you get rid of all the legal advices. I mean, a classic example, people, is this is where tokenisation is going to revolutionise the way we think about money raising and capital. It's going to really change our thinking and processes. I can tell you, this is going to be huge where we're heading. And Larry knows it. BlackRock's, they know it. They know the $31 trillion is going their way because no one else is out there competing. They're going to hijack all of these current blockchains. But guess what? The humble little fractionalisation of a Zucoin gives you the opportunity to play in the game because you will be able to tokenise whatever you like. And in fact, look, what I'll do, I'll just talk about a young person wanting to set up a business and the effect that the 2026 budget has had and how. Now, this is not financial advice. I mean, look, the opening statement could be that you blow it up your ass, right? Once you start off that, you can work your way up. But structures, asset protection in a combo with not letting these politicians get their grubby hands or becoming co-founders, as we've just indicated, with 47% taxes and all the other stuff that goes with it, and they take no risk. There's no risks of what these pollies are doing. As I said, they sit in the parliament, have a great time. Senators are on this 4 or 8 year contract, whatever it is. Do 3/10 of nothing. Pass some ridiculous laws. Rely on bureaucrats. They run the show. The tail wags the dog, people. Just remember that. You can have all the politicians changing every day, and the bureaucrats are the ones that are running the show. They know what's going on. Lock and load. They sign their long-term contracts, not like the private sector, but there you go. So, what does this mean? Young people, do not be disheartened. Dr. Zoo has got a plan. Dr. Zoo has got a plan for you. Now, let's just think about the overall combo of things that Zoo tokens can do with proper asset protection and planning and where this CGT thing and in the case of negative gearing on properties, and how long-term this can affect to do it right. So what is Dr. Zu suggesting? Well, let's just think about you build your business. You don't want Albo to get it all. You certainly don't want to be wallowing in a massive capital gains tax bill, whether it's under the old or new regime. But if you've got a brand new business today, brand new, you've got an idea, you've got a concept, you don't want to be hitting the walls too quick because your focus is on your great idea, your great concept. Now, we've got a couple of young people that have come in and said, look, how do I structure this, Dr. Zu? Because I've got this great idea. I've got this incredible app I want to build. I want to put some staff on. I want to do this. I want to do that. And all of a sudden they get chopped at the knees because they watch Albo on TV. Right? And he's trying to cover his butt with, doesn't do this and doesn't. The reality is you build a business up, you're going to get smashed, whether it's in the way in which the component of goodwill is, or whether you've got tangible assets, or whatever you do, you're in real trouble. So a little bit of an inside news. I don't want this to get out. Let's just keep this in the Zucoin family, people. If you're a young entrepreneur and you woke up this morning, you've got this extraordinarily incredible idea, go and get yourself 10 Zucoins for a start. Right, 10. Put them away, forget about it. Tuck away 10 Zucoins, because that's going to be the bedrock upon which you build your empire with fractionalization and tokens when we get to the point that your business is going to be worth truckloads. So the first thing we do, we look at a hybrid unit trust, people. We look at a hybrid unit trust. Just remember those words. You can look it up yourself. And it is a structure that complies with this sort of fixed units. Now, I won't get into land tax, I won't get into stamp duty, because that's another layer of dribble that you've got to be careful with if you're going to use the unit trust when you get involved with property. Right? Dr. Zu knows that firsthand because he's been playing games with the Revenue New South Wales and had a few big successful wins recently because of the unit trust. But the deed on that front can be tightened. In other words, you don't want to let any foreigners involved in your unit trust. That can be very explicit in the deed, and that gets rid of the foreign taxes on if you have property there for land taxes, and you don't want surcharges. That's another naughty thing. New South Wales government runs out of money, Victoria's worse, and they put in these naughty clauses just to raise some more money so they can give it to the CFMU, all the union officials who need extra money, by the way. So we set up a hybrid unit trust it's got basically different classes of units, and some of those units can have different entitlements with different owners. But essentially, you might have, for example, as an entrepreneur, so you're a young entrepreneur, you've kicked ass, you've got a great idea. This is one asset protection, reduction of capital gain solution post-budget 2026 for a new business operator. And keeping the inspiration going, getting that young person to come out and say, I'm going to focus on making 20, 30, 40 million dollars out of this new business with this new structure. So what do? You have as an individual trustee. You don't go down the road of the accountants will say, oh, we've got to set up a company. Companies are dead in the water. Dead in the water. The days of sitting there on the bridge in the year 1570 odd, creating a brand new thing called a company and using that to your advantage are gone. The laws are so tight and regulated about companies. The moment you take a few bob out, tax office looks at it and says, oh, hang on. You haven't made any money, but we'll do a Division 7A little test on you and we'll tax you on that as well because you've got a benefit out of the company. You got 30% rates. You got franking credits. You got all sorts of things. You can't even get the stuff out. You go and sell. It's a nightmare. You don't get any protection in the case of liquidation. In fact, if you don't pay your bills and someone says, look, listen, I'm going to issue a notice of demand, you could be wound up in 21 days. It's all too hard, people, for young entrepreneurs, frothing at the mouth, wanting to create wealth quickly, just like they want to do with their Zucoins, just like Dr. Zu wants his... Actually, let me digress. Someone sent the latest video on the Gulfstream G800, and it's just shot a level of excitement through the spine-tingling back of Dr. Zu like you wouldn't believe. The inside the features. I even believe with a couple of AI lessons, Dr. Zoo could fly the thing. Unbelievable. Beautiful. Staggering. You can just see it landing at Albury Airport and then taking off again, ready to head off to Hong Kong, Sha-Tin. Oh, unbelievable. So thank you for that video, people. That is inspired. The $1,000 US is back on the table big time. Never that it was never off the table. It's just getting tantalizingly, unbelievably close. As soon as this bits and pieces on AUSTRAC comes through and we can get the marketing where we want to see it, that is a very, very close position we want to be in. So let me say this. Structure. Get it right. And the beautiful thing about the hybrid trust, you start your business in the hybrid trust. You've got units. You can have them as non-voting or voting, or you can have different classes, A, B, C, D, and you can have different rights to capital, different rights to income. You can do a whole range of things. But you have yourself as the individual trustee, because the moment you get rid of the company, which has got no value to you, because you can still go down the toilet, you can still be director liabilities, you can get free visits from ASIC on Saturdays, you do all that sort of stuff. Just be, given the way the tax structure is today, just be in a position where you take the hit as an individual trustee. Now, let's say most businesses in early days are in real trouble, right? There's a very high percentage of failures in the first 12 months, even higher percentage by the end of 3 years. Once you come out of the scrum, you've got a half a chance. And then you do have those, a bit like horse racing, you get that 0.3% success rate of a particular business, 1% success rate that turns into a unicorn. Unicorns mean $1 billion plus, and it happens. You've got to stick with the vision, stick with the big picture. That's where we're at. If you stick to that big picture and you can structure it right, that you've got some comfort with protection. Where am I going with the units? Well, let's just say mum and dad or whoever's giving you $50,000 or $100,000 to set up your new business in a unit trust. That's your starting capital. That's your base. And you go off and you start and build apps, or you're going to get you're going to go and buy a pizza place or whatever you're going to do and borrow against that and start your business. And you've got vision. Things are going really bubbling along nicely. And you want to get rid of this capital gains tax problem. Now, that's when the fun starts. If you've got the numbers on the board and you've got the business firing up, it's running on all cylinders. It's really humming. And you might have a private investor, or you might have a sophisticated investor. And you were talking about sort of areas here where, with that in place, you want to duck and weave, and you don't necessarily want to go down the expensive road of ASIC in terms of raising capital. But let's just, for the tick, I'll get to the tokens in a minute, people. This is the exciting bit coming. But let's just say you're short of $1 million and two people put their hands up. Now, what you can do, you are in control with the unit trust to raise that capital. You don't need to sell your original units, which triggers a CGT event. You don't want to do that. You don't want to give 47% Albo straight away. He's going to have to earn his way to get this money. Him and Jimbo, they're going to have to really work hard if they want to keep and be part of this meme pictures of them being co-founders. Right? They might be co-founders in name only by the time we finish with this. So your business is going well. You've got this unit trust structure. You're the trustee. Could be anybody trustee, but you're the trustee. Why do we want the individual trustee? Because if you go down the toilet, you go down the shitter, and you go bankrupt, the law is absolutely perfectly clear. Section 116 of the Bankruptcy Act. They're not your assets. You can continue to trade the assets of that trust, if it's not in jeopardy, as a bankrupt. Just think about that for a minute. You're not being naughty. Don't worry about you're a bankrupt. Let's just think about the bankrupts in history. I've said it before. Henry Ford wouldn't have had any cars. Charles Goodyear wouldn't have any wheels. H.J. Heinz wouldn't have any tomato sauce. 5 American presidents were bankrupts. Abraham Lincoln. Walt Disney, be lucky to watch a movie with no cartoons. Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. All we got now is the real Donald Ducks. Donald Duck and Goofy. Talking about Albo and Jimbo. Now, don't ever, ever fear what it means as a bankrupt. Ulysses S. Grant, we've talked about him before, another great American president. Hey, bust his ass out there and fighting people and taking bullets up the arse, and all of a sudden becomes president and goes bankrupt. These blokes get out of this stuff. Rembrandt, beautiful. Does a painting, dead as a dodo, and boom. You can't even get near a Rembrandt painting today. Worth absolute tens of millions. Millions and millions and millions. The point is, there's nothing wrong with bankruptcy, and it can come around because of different circumstances. 27,000 people, the tax office, chase them, go bankrupt. And for what? Because they're running a business, they're taking a risk, they've turned the lights on, electricity, power, people, staff, employees, payroll tax, keep the thing rocking and rolling. And what happens? Stupid laws come into play, and suddenly revenues drop, and the person's got the house on the market because they can't afford to keep the business going because the entrepreneurialism has died. The hybrid trustee, you can still get a second chance and continue to get yourself out. You don't want to, I mean, obviously you've got to pay your bills at some stage. I mean, the tax office is the first ones that get in the queue. Albo again. They don't take any risk, but they're right up there. They'll come knocking real quick. Not too bad these days. They do some plans these days because, I think people in the bureaucrats know that the money goes out the door pretty quick on crazy projects like $273 million on the Institute of Measurement. I mean, oh, good God. I talked about it before, the old pink bats, $4 billion on pink bats. I don't even know where they all went. Someone made money out of the pink bats. But then, there you go. Chris Bowen, a good chat to him. And like I said, technology has advanced so great that, our good friend who picked up his new Chinese vehicle the other day has got a free trailer thrown in with a diesel thing on the back, and it keeps the car charged the whole time. Beautiful. Someone should have thought of that before. But it works well. Look, it works well. It just means the car keeps going, and he can tell everybody he's running on electricity and keeping the environment happy. Puts a cover over the back of the diesel thing. There's no smoke coming out the back. Beautiful, beautiful. Entrepreneurs. Now, if you got the business, if you've made and turned it into something that's really absolutely schmick, and you've got people interested, and they say, I want to give you $1 million. I want to put $1 million, and we're going to open up 3 more Harry coffee shops. 3 more. What you can do, people, you don't sell the original units. You can then issue more units that raises capital. That can't be taxed. That means the $1 million goes into the business. You haven't triggered a CGT event. You can tell Jimbo and Albo, go away. You're going to have to wait some time, boys. We're not in a hurry to give you that money for that National Institute of Measurement. Find something else to do. In fact, I was a bit disillusioned just the other day. I've heard stories about people with no houses living in tents down by the river. Now, that is pathetic. We can have this money spent on ridiculous projects, and we've still got people out and about. Doctors who's going to try and do something about that. Can't have people bloody wandering around down the Murray River down there, got nowhere to live, nowhere to be. And you might say, oh, well, they deserve that. Well, they don't. Nobody deserves that. That's got to be part and parcel of the long-term project. Governments need to get their shit together. And that's what they've got. It's not hard. There's a list of things in government to do. Why do they go down these other ridiculous paths? There's $500,000 gone to advertising in the latest budget, 2026. Jimbo decided it's a good idea to put up ads for women genital mutilation. Well, I get it. But surely that's a health thing. And surely that $500,000 could go down to try and look at how we look at these people that've got no money. They're, weathering the weather and living out there in a bag and a tent and on the bloody seat. That's here, let alone what's going on in the cities. Anyway, that's another day. Let's just think about the capital. You've now succeeded in creating a powerhouse little business. You've got yourself running it. You've got asset protection. You've got people that are interested in the business. They want to come on board, and they've tipped $1 million in, and there's not a single bit of tax paid in terms of capital gains tax at all at this stage. Not a ZAC. And you can even have those units issued with non-voting rights. If you think you've got a power surge and a hunger and thirst to control things, well, that might be a condition of the money coming in. The $1 million comes in the door because you know what you're doing, and you've given them no voting rights on those particular units. You can even adjust the returns they get, both in terms of capital and income. Beautiful. We're talking, there's not a huge, and there's no asset costs here, by the way, people. You don't need it as a company. You're not exposing yourself to all the dimwits out there as a company. You've still got the distribution firepower as a fixed trust in terms of income, and you can play with the numbers later. But this is where it gets fun. This is where Dr. Zoo starts to, he gets excited. He says, okay, let's assume now people have got their units. Why don't we tokenize the units, people? Now, we've had a bit of a squiz at the old corporations law. We've had a look at the definitions of financial products and all that sort of stuff. And sure, there's going to be a bit of a fine line here between bits and pieces. In some instances, somebody may need an AFSL license to convert those units, which then spill into returns, because there could be a smart contract that says we now want to launch those tokens, and let's just call them unit trust tokens or unit trust Zoo tokens. Got to get your head around this, people. Suddenly, you have become and put yourself in a position as an entrepreneur that you know there's 100 million people in Zootopia, and they're looking for other alternative tokens, which includes your business. You've now got a secondary market exit strategy without having to go to the stock exchange, write a check out for $1 million to a lawyer to tell you that a report that this is going to be high risk, blah, blah, blah. Because let me tell you, if you're raising $5 million for a gold mine that you want to drill, and you put $2 million into people telling you how risky it is, and you only get $3 million worth of drilling, who's the winner? Because on the front cover, when you're looking for gold or metals or whatever, and you're drilling holes, Blind Freddy could tell you that the front would say in big letters, you'll blow this up your ass. Because it's high risk. You don't need 200 pages of reports telling you that you're right next door to some other lease that may or may not be perfect. The reality is it's high risk. Now, the world is changing because suddenly small businesses, haven't even talked about big businesses yet, but small businesses like this little humble hybrid trust, it might need another 2 or 3 million because they're going to put up another 5 shops. And tokenization is the way to go, because you can tokenize with the preemptive caveat of making sure that you don't want to fall foul of the corporations law. But having said that, it may only be available to sophisticated investors. The beauty is you do not need to list it on an Australian stock exchange or NASDAQ or anywhere else for that matter, because you could park it as a normal token on and there could be multitudes of these marketplaces popping up. Doesn't have to be just Zootopia, but you then have a ready-made market of which to put your product and make yourself known as to what you are doing as a business with these tokens as a secondary market. Now, let's just take this and tease this out a little bit more. We're on a roll. We are on a roll, people. We've got the business. We've got the unit trust. We've raised initially some money. We haven't paid a cent in CGT. We've got capital in the company. We now can give an exit strategy for tokenization, Zoo tokens or unit trust tokens. They're readily tradable, just like your Zucoins on the market. People come and go. They buy them. Now, at that point, you could trigger, or you will trigger, a CGT event because you're selling those into a secondary market. But that could be years away. That could be down the road. You've got a tax deferral plan here. You're still saying to Albo and Jimbo, hey, listen, you better revisit your numbers because you're not getting this for the next 10 years. You're not getting your grubby hands on this money because you're going to bleed me to death as a co-founder doing nothing Not a single bit of contribution to any of the build-up of the business. So you can wait. And if you've got other ideas on raising capital or tax because you don't want to pay the people down the road that are sitting right now wondering how they're going to sleep tonight because they're down on the river, because you're not focused on that, or the NDIS, or suddenly you've got 165,000 people that can't even scratch themselves that are going to be out in limb because you focus on things like giving Jacinda another $4 billion to build a tunnel that's going nowhere on stupidity. It's not hard, but it is hard if these clowns continue to run the show. Now, there is another way if you don't want to create a secondary trigger by putting your interest in your business for sale as tokens on, say, a Zootopia. And the answer is this. Because you've got a secondary market that's created and people like Zucoins, you know, there'll be some trades there at 50 cents or $1, and then all of a sudden we'll wake up one morning and you'll hear the sound of the Gulf Stream because it's hit 1,000, and all of a sudden people say, holy crap, how long's this been going on? You know, we talked about the 20% value using quantity theory of money, got some great analysis of that on a bigger scale. And guess what? You've got a market creating a value, just like any property in the country. You know, you've got these valuers running around. God knows what they do. That's another bunch of blokes that intrigue me. You can have a property value literally from 4 weeks ago, and there's a 10% drop in the value because of well, it could be attributed to Jimbo actually. But anyway, that's a live case. You know, property value dropped by 10%. You've got to be kidding me. Anyway, you live with that. At least that's less capital gains tax the wombats are going to get because there's less value in the property. How good's that? That solves that problem. But if you look at the secondary trading and you've created a value, the trading might say that your very tokens of your business, your unit trust units that are now trading on Zootopia are worth, say, for example, $10. And it capitalizes this unit trust business at 10 million. And you've got 50%. You haven't sold anything. You've raised capital. You build a business. You know, you're excited. You're going to get another 45 employees. You're going to expand it with all sorts of things. You're putting in a jazz bar, and all of a sudden you've got alcohol served, and the lights are staying up on a bit longer. You've got more waitresses and staff and all this sort of things happening. And it's humming. This joint is humming. People are flying in from around the world to enjoy the facilities and what you built. You're kicking ass. It's now worth $10 million. You got a 50% interest. Guess what? There will be a situation that this becomes so serious of value propositions of tokenization, real world assets, people will start to lend against the tokens. And that's how the world of Elon Musk lives. He doesn't run around selling stuff. He borrows. He margin lends. He's going to launch this IPO with $1.3 trillion. He don't give a stuff. Company's probably going to take 1,000 years to make any money, because by the time we get DoorDash working and Menulog at Mars, I mean, the delivery times are going to be slow. So, you know, there'll be a group of people up there, heads up their ass, wondering where the next delivery's coming from, running out of oxygen or whatever you're doing, carrots. And all of a sudden, there's never going to be a profit. But he doesn't care, because you know why? He margin lends against his stock. The price goes up, the lending increases, and he doesn't pay any tax. You can't tax debt. Now that concept, well, maybe down the road we're starting to get into a world of, it's a dangerous world, because land tax came out of nothing. You think about it, 1911, some bloke woke up and said, we're short of money in South Australia. We need money. We need money to fund some of the dribble. And what do? You own the land, the first 12 feet of it. We got the mining rights. We'll revalue your value of the land. And what's over and above that, we'll tax something that we don't even have anything to do with. It's an extraordinary concept. You take the risks in shares, you take the risks in crypto, you take the risks in property, and some dimwit says, hang on, even though I have nothing to do with it, I'll tax you on stuff I've got nothing to do with. That's the concept of land tax. I mean, the only thing we haven't been taxed on yet, or maybe there is air. But that day will come. We're already talking about more taxes for electricity to keep the vehicles going, that even people that haven't got an electric vehicle are going to allow those with electric vehicles to get on the roads that we've paid for and still pay with the fuel excise. And they're running up and down the highway with their electric vehicles, and we're going to pay extra to keep the cars going up and down. And that's why, people, when I started out today's talk, the ingenious part of electricity in the car was the trailer with the generator at the back. Think about it. This is the crazy world we're in. But this is where the big players, they control the markets. They get these stocks and shares listed. They see the prices movement. They do all this sort of stuff. They play the game. They borrow against it. They use the money. They put them in asset-protected structures. They have what's called non-recourse loans. It goes down the toilet, doesn't trigger a CGT event, and they've still got their wealth. You can play this game too. Tokenisation is going to be the game stomper. It's going to change everything. And if you can create that token of value of proof of ownership, that's what it's about. One person needs to prove that another person has what he's got, what he's saying he's got, not just by the smart contract. Scalability. If you want tens of millions of tokens, whether they're merchant tokens, whether they're of value through AR, whether they're of value because you're tradable instead of advertising, or whether they're valuable because they're going to get hooked into assets like this humble little unit trust example today, that's where younger generation needs to be. The younger generation needs to really sit back and say, what have we got at our disposal? We have now the firepower of AI. Use the bloody thing. Don't sit back and say it's not helping. You know, I had a laugh on telly the other day. The teachers were getting all worked up because parents are using AI to basically shove it up their asses to what they're teaching. Well, guess what? Welcome to planet Earth. Welcome to planet Earth. The knowledge base now and the firepower is coming back to the poor buggers in the street. That power has to be used in a way that puts you ahead of the game, gives you the right to be participating in some of these structures. Don't just assume. And you can get your own legal advice on all this. You know, there's plenty of case law on it. There's plenty of structures. Dr. Zoo's been testing these structures for 20 years now in all procedures and courts and cases. And it gives you a combo to protect what you've got and give you half a shot. Manage the way in which you structure your affairs so you've got the ability to keep capital to work for your business and growth. Because at the end of the day, you make the money, you give 47% plus to Albo and Jimbo, and you can rest assured that's gone. It's vaporized. We can't even put money into an armed forces. I mean, how stupid's that? I mean, if a boat of robots and drones rocked up on the shores of Sydney this afternoon, we'd be stuffed. Right? Because we don't pre-plan the proper processes of accountability for expenditures in government, and that filters down to everybody, and that includes everybody else that's trying to get ahead. And if you get ahead and you've succeeded, you can direct and steer into a foundation your monies, and you can start to work out how to overcome some of the homelessness that's going on and give those people a chance as well. Why isn't there a village built down there? Why isn't there all these things happening? It used to be a caravan park down there. It could be another caravan park. People need hope. They need vision. Doesn't matter where you are. Remember what I said earlier. I'll finish on this note. 10 Zucoins. For God's sake, put them away. You can make your millions and trillions, all the rest of it. Put 10 away. That 10 has the firepower to create another layer of wealth. And you should be in control of how and when you want that wealth to be sold, generate the profits, and what you do with them. Not dictated to in the early days as to how your business is going to collapse because some clown introduces these new laws and says that that's going to deliver 70,000 more homes. I mean, for God's sake, 70,000 homes. If you turf 500,000 people out because they shouldn't be here in the first place, you won't need to worry about 70,000 homes. And if you're a young person, you got Buckleys. You won't have a job. You won't get you can't even fill out the application form because you can't service what's happening. And if there's no jobs at the top end, you need to create your job, create your wealth. Structures will be important. So, on that happy note, let me just finish with this little comment. Will you consider bringing expert guests every now and again and in future? Absolutely. That is the long-term program. And also, let me say this. The brownie points are on the board. People are a lot happier. People are a lot happier and more excited to meet people when you can say, there's the Zucoin that's trading at $1,000 a coin. Everybody wants to be on a winning football team. If you get a chance, have a look at that Netflix series. I think it's on Netflix. Jimmy Vardy. Never heard of him before. Soccer player for Leicester. 5,000 to 1 shot at winning the Premier League. An amazing story of coming from absolute zero to a hero. Doesn't matter how you apply that. The same principles across the board with some of these extraordinary stories. You only got to look at the horsing world. Mind That Bird, 2009, 50 to 1 shot. Should never even been near a racetrack. And yet you can see the successes and the wins. So I'll wrap up. I was very impressed to see in the Australian the other day, people, about one of the leading fund managers saying that one of the best businesses left in the game, would you believe, because it's tax-free, is horse racing and gambling. Now that's where we've come to. Can you believe it? A leading fund manager. You can have a look at the article, because the government is bleeding everybody to death. Well, let's fight back. Structures, set it up properly, put a strategy in place, and take advantage, for God's sake, on the way the world is heading with new capitalisation through tokens. That's not just Zoo tokens, but tokenisation around the world, and that's why BlackRock and the big guns are playing this game. They know there is another massive level of wealth coming, and if you're not on the inside, people, you're on the outside. On that happy note, everybody, leave it with you. I'll try and talk back on the other topic on Monday. We will always give an immediate update if we get any news ASAP on AUSTRAC, and that takes precedent. We get that, boom shakalaka. Let's go. Take it easy, everybody. Enjoy your day and weekend. Don't forget Rotogilla, Saturday, race 7. Big guns. There's a gun that's got to come out of the blocks and show what he can do. And that is Rotogilla, alligator spelt backwards. And to my friends at the Keurig, thanks very much for not having the inquiry today, because one of your members has been a bit naughty in the past. We won't talk about that now, but we'll leave that for another day. Cheerio, everybody. Stay with it, and you just keep thumping.